Hello, everyone. My name is Joe Curry. I'm Director of Americas for Nina and Pinta Corporate Travel Consulting. I recently had the privilege on June 21st of participating and moderating a webinar presented by GBTA North Carolina and Nina and Pinta Consulting, focused on the new corporate travel journey. And this webinar was specifically focused on before you board, the air perspective. So as travelers and corporate travel buyers enter the new corporate travel market, what elements are most important to them from an airline sourcing perspective, traveler experience perspective, and how are the suppliers responding to those events and safety issues that are top of mind for everyone now? Within that session, we specifically talked about a couple of different topics. One was what were the current business travel impediments leading towards a slow transition back to business travel? What can the traveler expect from a security and safety and comfort perspective as they move back through that journey? Also establishing expectations from a buyer perspective. What can a buyer expect from the sourcing initiatives that may be taking place in the future? Also touching upon long-term success plans for airlines. So what will be put in place from airline perspective to make them successful as we move forward into this new travel journey? NDC, talking about the status of NDC and airline content and initiatives that have been very important leading up to COVID initiatives, and how that may stand now. And finally, what learnings and silver linings that we can find from the examples that we've seen and presented within supplier relationships that are existing today in this new corporate travel journey. Fortunately, today I'm joined today by Robert Hess, Manager of Southeast Business for Southwest Airlines. He is going to go through a quick rapid fire session of 6 questions, and he'll have 2 minutes to respond to each one of those questions and provide his input on each of the topics that I discussed before. Robert, do you mind giving us a quick introduction of yourself and a little bit of detail about what you do on a day-to-day basis?
Oh, perfect. Well, thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate the opportunity. Again, I'm Robert Hess. I have been in the corporate travel world for about 26 years. 25 of those years was with Avis Budget Group and handled various roles throughout the United States. About 7 months ago, I was fortunate enough to join Southwest Airlines, and currently I have a team that covers from the Southern Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Alabama, and up into Tennessee. And so excited to be here, and again, really appreciate the opportunity.
No problem, Robert. Thank you for joining us. We're excited to have you. So with that, we'll jump right into our first question. And the question is current business travel impediments. So Robert, what are the biggest barriers prohibiting a strong return of corporate travel as we see some of the different trends unraveling with COVID and the new corporate travel journey?
Yeah, and obviously COVID is the biggest barrier, the uncertainty that surrounds COVID still, and the safety that people feel when they want to get back on an airplane. So that definitely is the biggest barrier that still exists for corporate travel and travelers in general. I think the good news is all the airlines are starting to see some, green shoots, as we call them, where air travel over the past month has definitely picked up, and we're seeing that both from the corporate side and the leisure side. So, so that biggest barrier really, I think, is regarding feeling comfortable to travel, and that relates to cleanliness and safety on the aircraft. And as the other airlines had mentioned, we'll talk about that in a minute as far as what Southwest is doing to help that situation. I think another big barrier to a strong return for corporate travel is offices and corporate headquarters opening again. I think that there's some travelers out there right now that are anxious to travel and go visit their customers, but the fact that the companies themselves are still in phased openings causes a bit of a challenge there. So that's going to be another really important aspect to getting business travel fully back on board. And then lastly, somewhat related to that is groups, conventions, even company sales meetings or other types of meetings and gatherings that were pretty common, obviously, for businesses in the past. There's now rules in various states, various cities on how many people can even get together. So that's another barrier that even if the travelers and the company are ready to get out there again, what are the rules and the appropriateness of various gatherings in certain towns. So those are the biggest barriers that I think that are out there.
That's a very good point. Those are all very good points. Just to touch upon within the webinar that we last did, of the 150 participants that were polled, the survey basically indicated that the top two barriers or impediments to returning to a fast return to business travel were actually governance and regulatory. So those that were driven by the government, but also the corporations themselves. And then the second was an anxiety and fear, specifically around the experience, the hygiene, the safety elements associated as well. It was almost kind of split half and half between the two, and then from there drastically reduced between the other choices within the poll itself.
Right.
So kind of in that same vein of what we were just talking about, and I know you referred to it, from a security and safety and comfort perspective. So this picture here is obviously this woman in a blanket and she's wrapped up, and as an airline, you want to make sure your passengers feel as much of that experience as possible, that safety security element. What are the steps that you're taking at Southwest to ensure both the safety and comfort as we move forward and more travelers start to move, get back on the move again?
Yep, Joe, that's the critical thing right now. And I think all airlines, the first big step that all the airlines have taken and continue to take is looking at the safety and cleanliness of the airport, the facilities that they control, the airplane, the gates, and traveler safety. So, that is a big critical piece of getting things moving again for business travelers. So at Southwest, we have the Southwest Promise. You can find it at southwest.com/promise. It is constantly improving and evolving as things continue to be discovered. But I'll quickly walk you through some of the tenets to hopefully make travelers feel safer and comfortable about traveling, even right now.
Please.
So first off, Southwest is only selling 2/3 of our aircraft, so that we are still committed to leaving the middle seats open through September. Could extend farther, but as of right now, through September, we are going to have middle seats available. If families are traveling together or coworkers are traveling together and they're comfortable sitting next to each other voluntarily, they can do that, which just opens up more space on the plane for other travelers as well from a distancing perspective. So we're doing that. Secondly, at the time of check-in, Southwest has now implemented a Southwest Health Declaration upon check-in. So all the customers are going to be asked to make sure they're aware of our face covering policy, that they've had no COVID symptoms or exposure in the past 14 days, and that they don't have a fever on the day of travel. Again, that is a self-declaration, but it is something to make the traveler think about those different aspects and be prepared for that in their travel journey. Once the traveler gets to the airport, we have instituted and put up protective plexiglass shields.
Mm-hmm.
It will be between the traveler and the Southwest employee at various interaction points to get baggage check-in, at the gate to help minimize potential and exposure there. In Southwest, our boarding process has always been somewhat unique. We used to board in groups of 30, with 30 people on either side of our stanchions, if you've flown Southwest before. We've now reduced that to boarding in groups of 10 people only,
Okay.
physically distanced as well. So that's the way we're boarding. It's worked out very well so far. Once the traveler gets to the plane itself, the mask, to physically enter the plane and be on the plane, a mask is required. And if the traveler doesn't have one, we are providing one for them. And then we're also giving access to disinfecting wipes if the traveler themselves wants to continue to wipe down various areas that they'll be in. I think, the biggest part that everybody thinks about too is kind of that non-controllable from their perspective, the plane itself, the physical inside of the aircraft. And so some things that we've implemented now is electrostatic disinfectant and antimicrobial spray. That's a tough thing to say. But it's something that lasts up to 30 days. And we've invested in these machines, not just for now, but going forward as well. This is going to be something that will be continuous into the future, which hopefully gives some comfort. That mist actually gets up into areas and crevices that the human hands can't even touch. And it provides a really incredibly safe base and barrier for up to, again, 30 days. In addition to that, every night when that plane is done flying, it gets 6 to 7 hours of deep cleaning by crews with hospital grade disinfectants from nose to tail and everywhere in between. When the flight takes off the next day, in between flights, when that flight lands, people exit, and before the next group gets on, we're also doing another scrub of the plane with various touch points, armrests, tray tables, call buttons, bin handles, etc. So again, really focused on cleaning. The last two things that I think really, for me personally this was new to me, but made me feel even that much more comfortable, is the HEPA air filters that are installed into the aircrafts now that are very high efficiency air filters, remove 99.7% of all airborne particles. But the number one thing for me, as I've talked to various people, they weren't aware of this, nor was I, is the cabin air changes every 2 to 3 minutes in our aircraft. So basically that cabin air doesn't just keep rotating, it actually exits the plane, outside air enters into the plane, goes through those filters, and that process happens every 2 to 3 minutes. So, with all of those things combined, I think it may be perhaps the cleanest area and air of that entire journey. So it's a big focus for all airlines. So hopefully that makes people feel a bit more comfortable about sitting on that plane for an hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, et cetera.
Well, I think you make a good point there. You cover all bases. And within another poll that we had done within the same session, their biggest concern wasn't so much relying on the airlines and cleanliness associated with the airplane and things like that, because it's apparent that all the suppliers in the airline world are doing their best efforts and providing the materials around what they are doing and communicating those steps that they're doing. It was more so focused on the hygiene of their neighbors. So within your current format that you have now, you have the separation, which you can't have full social distancing on a plane, 6 feet here, right, there, forward, backwards. But nonetheless, you can still have that separation element, and you have the air filters, you have the cleanliness standards in place. So I think it covers a lot of the bases from a concern perspective. And it's just a matter of making sure that on a one-on-one basis that you have the travelers that adhere to the standards that they need to. And, you obviously have a process in place to ensure that they will adhere to that. But nonetheless, just going through the experience and making sure that if everyone kind of follows suit, that'll help the traveler in general.
Exactly. Yeah.
So kind of following along with that, if I'm a traveler or if I'm a buyer, either one, you did a good job of explaining the touch point. So as I arrive from a traveler perspective to the airport, what can they expect flying Southwest? And then quickly touching upon after that, from a buyer perspective, if they're looking to have conversations about a relationship or a partnership with you, what can they expect there as well?
So from the traveler perspective, they can expect to have less touch points. We're going to really try to encourage the use of technology as much as possible that is either currently in place that maybe people just don't use, or we're trying to think of new ways to limit the touch points or exchanges of documents, et cetera. So that's definitely something I think the traveler can look for now and in the future. The mobile boarding pass is the most basic example. Instead of printing your boarding pass, handing that boarding pass to the gate agent and et cetera, just having that one touch of your pass yourself in your control is something. Again, along with the barriers we talked about earlier to keep the exchange between the traveler and the Southwest employee limited. So I think that's going to be of that continued travel journey. Open middle seats, again, is something to expect as a traveler, at least with Southwest through the end of September. Could be longer as we go through this process. I think for buyers, from a buyer perspective right now at this time, there could be some really good opportunities with all the different airlines to negotiate or talk about new programs that may be available. For Southwest, for example, we have a prepay option that is available to use some idle funds that some companies might have that were in their travel budget that weren't spent. And so this is a new thing that Southwest, and we heard some of our customers asking about it. So we do have the opportunity to prepay to use funds either through the end of 2020 or all the way through the end of 2021 onto a UATP card, and the company would get a bonus back in dollars of up anywhere from 2 to 15%. So it could be tens of thousands of dollars worth of, in essence, free flights going forward. So those are the kind of the two biggest things for both the traveler and the buyer is the continued cleanliness, the focus on cleanliness, and for the traveler themselves in the journey going forward, and then buyers having the ability to take this time to, think how can we improve the programs we have in place now, or take advantage of opportunities into the future.
And just a quick follow-up question on that. From a traveler perspective, do you anticipate, obviously everyone's going through this for the first time, do you anticipate ask them to show more patience throughout this time? How, from a timing perspective, do you see any sort of delays in the process itself from airport to airplane and then off the planing? Is there anything that they should keep in mind if they're about to go on the road themselves?
Actually, that's a great question. So, a little bit more time on the deplaning and obviously the onboarding of the plane, both, because we're going to try to really do our best to keep everybody properly distanced during the boarding and deplaning process. So yeah, that could cause obviously a bit more time to both board and deplane. So from that perspective, yes, I think, if travelers can, have that mindset ahead of time that that likely will occur, but it's for their own safety and other safety. I think
absolutely
very open to that. Through the security itself, once things start to pick up more and more, that's a great question that it'll be curious, for the various airports, how they're going to accommodate the distancing and how you get through that safety checkpoint without significant delays.
Yeah, it's a good point, and something that we look to circle back on in the future. Yeah. Potentially having some of the airport CFOs that we know on a webcast ahead. So yeah. we will find out the answer to that later on. Final or fourth question: long-term success planning. So obviously, COVID has thrown a wrench in the plans of business travel. That was really kind of a boom sort of environment going into the COVID world. And now afterwards, we're seeing some changes, obviously some for the better. Where do you see Southwest positioning yourself for longer-term success because of COVID-19 at this point?
So, each airline is taking their own unique steps based on their own situations due to COVID. From a long-term success standpoint, Southwest has always been an airline. The mantra internally at the airline has been to have the mindset of prepare for downtimes during the good times. And it's been a very cost-focused, traveler-focused, safety-focused airline. And that helped us as we entered into COVID. We had a very strong cash position. We had very low debt. Still, obviously, very difficult situation. Southwest has been profitable for 48 years straight. Never had any involuntary layoffs, and we're continuing to want to continue that trend. So we entered into it in as best a position as we could. Like most companies, though, we've paused hiring. We've paused certain non-critical projects, non-essential spending, things of that nature, like most companies we do. Obviously, we've adjusted flight schedules to match demand. We have, though, kept every single domestic location, every city that we flew to pre-COVID, we're still flying to now. It's just a matter of, how many times we're going to those cities. So as we forward, we're optimistic that we're in a good position to quite frankly, actually grow further. We are prepared. Our CEO, Gary Kelly, has mentioned that we're looking to be at full pre-pandemic flight schedule by January is what we're looking to do, and we're on track to that as of now. We're continuing to invest in our Southwest business team, the team that I work on and work with. We doubled in size over the past 18 months, and we actually did onboard an additional 18 new account managers and salespeople and into Southwest business in the midst of COVID. And nicely for North Carolina, we have 2 individuals that are now based in North Carolina, Jay Burlat and Josh Abahantalis, if I said that right. Great guy. But we've got 2 folks dedicated now to North Carolina because we know how important of a state that is, and we never had that before. So we're excited there. And then lastly, in a unique way, with the MAX is anticipated to come back in Q4 is the latest we've heard there. So we see some really, really good opportunities for Southwest with the MAX return in Q4. We're going to have 34 planes coming back, the MAXs in the Q4. Into 2021, we should have an additional 48 MAXs and then another 200 MAXs slated for delivery in the next 4 years. And what that does is it allows us to substitute one for one the older 737s that are smaller for the new MAXs. So we're going to have a nice combination of increased capacity but lower unit costs because the MAX is such a
That's right.
efficient aircraft. So all that being said, as far as restructuring, we're actually structuring to grow and do our best to serve all the travelers and corporate businesses that we can.
And what I'll say is, we appreciate all airlines that join us, but one thing I did notice personally was that Southwest was one of those at the forefront of communication around responsiveness during this time, how you're restructuring as an organization overall. So it's interesting to see the proactive approach compared to some others in the market that may be now in a reactive type stage overall. So all good points. Thank you, Robert. So kind of one thing, another subject that was really important leading up to COVID-19 was content, NDC. It was full track to move forward. Everyone was getting involved. From a content NDC perspective or just in general, have those initiatives stopped with Southwest Airlines because of COVID, or is everything still on track to continue forward from access to everything that buyers are looking for or agents are looking for?
Yeah, it was an interesting time when COVID hit due to Southwest fully entering into full participation in the GDS system via Travelport, Apollo, and WorldSpan. That had been something that had been worked on for quite a while, a big goal for Southwest Airlines based on our customers telling us that full GDS functionality was really important. So definitely something we invested in for a long time. The launch was scheduled for May, right in the midst of all of this. And it was pretty quickly decided we're going to continue with that. It's such an important piece for Southwest because of our customers that we did end up moving forward. And so in May, and as we sit here today, there is full functionality capability for both Apollo and WorldSpan. And actually today, we just launched, ironically enough, Galileo with full functionality for Southwest Airlines, and Amadeus, the Amadeus GDS system, where that's going to be out very, very shortly as well. So as far as different channels, those were key ones for us. We decided to maintain the investment and moving forward with both of those or all of those. And we'll continue to do so. We know that that's going to be a key, making the experience for the companies, the travelers, as easy as possible on both the front and back end. So we're committed to continuing with our plans.
Fantastic. And so we'll end the grueling questions with the final quick rapid fire question on silver lining. So what I've noticed is that companies have an opportunity to respond, or they have an opportunity to take advantage or put themselves in a better position, as you said, to be successful in the future. companies are learning lessons about themselves, what they're doing, how they operate every day. What are some of the silver linings that both a traveler and a buyer can expect moving forward after this process? So what would you say is something good in the traveler experience realm, and likewise in the buyer world as well?
Absolutely. For travelers, I do honestly believe that the cleanliness, which kind of breeds that comfort and peace of mind while traveling, is going to be something that is here forever now. Obviously airlines, airports, etc., always want a clean environment, but this situation has just brought that to a level that has prompted airlines to look at even more enhanced cleaning, comfort, and convenience situations. So I think the silver lining for travelers is, from this point forward, you can really feel confident that the airports, the airlines are going to provide continued clean environments, safe environments, and continue to evolve in regards to technology to make it easier to book, board, and exit aircraft. So I think that's a silver lining for travelers. For buyers right now, again, I go back to what we talked about earlier. As the airline industry has is in a really, really tough spot now with demand being so low, I do believe it provides a great opportunity for buyers to look at their agreements. The airlines are going to be fighting for those travelers as travel begins to open again, and we're going to fight for every traveler that we can get, as will other airlines. So I think it's a good chance to look at unique ways to structure agreements, with various things that may be included, either it's rebates or prepays or other unique things that I think airlines will be more open to than perhaps they've been in the past. And lastly, for Southwest, the silver lining, I think is as companies, unfortunately, almost all companies have been affected financially due to COVID. As we come out of this, they're really going to be open to, more, choices, different choices, airlines that provide, low fees, no fees, things of that nature. So I think it's going to be an opportunity for Southwest to expand our customer base. So that's the silver lining for us.
I could not agree more. I think this is an opportunity to establish, not only solidify your loyal clients to even become lifelong clients for life, but to establish a new brand of loyalty for clients that aren't currently fully utilizing your services or negotiating rates with Southwest Airlines. And then also personally, I feel as an individual traveler going out on the road, when I go out on my first business trip, I feel confident that I can now use the tray table in front of me and that it is completely clean. I mean, not that was ever in question for Southwest before, but on airlines that I've traveled before, it has been in question as to what you touch. And I think that from a safety perspective, as I said before, it kind of all goes back to the biggest concern comes with how close is my neighbor and how clean is my neighbor. And right. I think you from an airline perspective, as well as from a confidence perspective, are doing everything you can to help set the right expectations, to communicate the right way, and make sure that you're doing it the best way possible for the success of everyone that's involved. So I appreciate your time, Robert. Once as a follow-up for this, what we're going to do is we're going to have a couple of upcoming webcasts with some other suppliers, but Southwest, we really appreciate your input. We apologize that we didn't have you on the initial panel discussion within the webinar, and we're thankful to have your input so that we can provide it to those that have an interest, and those also interested in a future upcoming webinar as well. We have one on July 23rd called Check In or Check Out, which is the hotel perspective on the new corporate travel journey. So we will be getting that perspective as well. But in the meantime, Robert, thank you very much. Any final words of wisdom for our folks that are watching today?
Well, I just want to say thank you again for the opportunity. Really excited about Southwest's commitment to North Carolina. And I look forward to meeting all of you watching this into the very near future, along with the two new folks that we have based in North Carolina to service all your needs.
Thank you, Robert.
All right, thank you.
And then